Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. Tonight's video features true unexplained missing person reports. I want you to sit back, relax, and stay sinful. The Soldering Children. On Christmas Eve, December 24th, 1945, a fire destroyed the Solder home in Fayetteville, West Virginia. At the time, it was occupied by George Solder, his wife Jenny, and 9 of their 10 children. During the fire, George, Jenny, and 4 of the 9 children escaped. The bodies of the other 5 children have never been found. The fire was blamed on faulty wiring. However, one of the jurors involved in the inquest had, at one point, threatened George Solder, saying his house would be burned and his children destroyed. The Solders continued to question the official findings about the fire. They wondered why, if it had been caused by an electrical problem, the family's Christmas lights had remained on throughout the fire's early stages, when the power should have gone out. A telephone repairman told the Solders that the house's phone line had not been burned through in the fire, as they had initially thought, but cut by someone who had been willing and able to climb 14 feet up the pole. A missing ladder belonging to the Solders was found at the bottom of an embankment soon after the incident. A man whom neighbors had been stealing a block and tackle from the property around the time of the fire was identified and arrested. He admitted to the theft and claimed he had been the one who cut the phone line, thinking it was a power line, but denied having anything to do with the fire. However, no record identifying him exists, and why would he have wanted to cut any utility lines to the Solder house while stealing the block and tackle has never been explained. Jenny Solder also had trouble accepting Morris's belief that all the traces of the children's bodies had been burned completely in the fire. Many of the household appliances had been found, still recognizable in the ash. A local crematorium supported her theory. The truck's failure to start was also considered. George Solder believed they had been tampered with, perhaps by the same man who stole the block and tackle, cut the phone line. The only fragments ever found on the site were a few human vertebrae fragments, although they were confirmed to have never been exposed to fire. Rico Harris. Rico Harris was a massive 6'9" former Harlem Globetrotter basketball player who had drug issues earlier in his life. Rico had made a full recovery and was getting his life back on track. He was driving along California's Interstate I-5 from his home in Southern California to Seattle to live with his girlfriend. He was somewhere just north of Sacramento, exhausted, told his girlfriend over the phone that he wanted to check out the mountains. All calls stopped since then. His car was found a couple days later by a patrolman near a rest stop in the mountains. A massive search was launched, with no signs of him. The strangest part? A driver later reported seeing a massive 6'9" individual wandering down the highway, just a mile from where the car was found, a week later. A search was relaunched. Massive size 17 footprints were found in the ground that were not there before. They were getting very close, and then nothing. No trace, no body, nothing. Where did Rico go the first time he disappeared? Where was he for an entire week? And where did he disappear to again? The fact that someone could disappear twice is what makes this so damn mystifying to me. Angela Hammond. While driving home, Angela Hammond stops at a phone booth to call her fiancé Rob. Describes a creepy-looking man in a pickup truck in the parking lot. Her fiancé Rob suddenly hears Angela scream, drives into town to check on her. He passes by a pickup truck and sees Angela struggling with an unidentified man, but after attempting a pursuit, the transmission on his truck gives out. This is the last anyone ever sees of Angela. She still hasn't been found and went missing in 1991. Stacy Eris. It was in the afternoon of July 17, 1981, when a group of 6, plus Eris and her father, rode into Sunrise High Sierra Camp on horseback. The camp sits 9,400 feet above sea level and is regarded for its historic significance, being the final stop in Yosemite's Mountain Chalet Loop. It was built in 1961 to make backcountry an alluring destination for tourists, offering stunning wilderness vistas, but also creature comforts like showers and reasonably comfy beds. Eris told her father that she wanted to photograph a nearby lake. It wasn't terribly far, just over a bluff. He declined to accompany his daughter, 14 at the time, but an elderly man from their group would tag along. At some point, the 77-year-old man grew tired and sat down to rest. Eris, seemingly determined to reach the water, trekked onward. Back at the camp, the group's tour guide remembered noticing her from afar. She was standing on a rock about 50 yards south of the trail. According to a summary of her official cold case file, that was the last time anyone saw Eris, or the last time anyone is known to have seen her. She vanished that day, without a trace, leaving only her camera lens behind. Amy Lynn Bradley. She was on a cruise with her family. She was last seen asleep on the balcony of the cabin, was seen earlier in the night with the band on the cruise. She was reported missing shortly after the cruise docked. There were no signs of her on the ship or in the ocean. There were possible sightings of Bradley in Caraco in 1998 and 1999. 2 Canadian tourists reported seeing a woman resembling Amy on a beach in Caraco in August of 1998. The woman's tattoos were reportedly identical to Bradley's. Bradley's tattoos included a Tasmanian devil spinning a basketball located on her shoulder, the sun placed on her lower back, a Chinese symbol located on her right ankle, and a gecko lizard on her navel. She also had a navel ring. A member of the Navy stated that he saw Bradley in a brothel in 1999. He claimed she told him that her name was Amy Bradley, and she begged him for help, explaining that she was not allowed to leave. I find it freaky just because of how terrifying human trafficking is. Juan Martinez. Juan Martinez disappeared while on vacation with his mother and father, who was a truck driver. His dad was carrying a load of 20,000 liters of sulfuric acid en route to a chemical plant, or something similar, when he somehow started driving erratically down a long declining road. The truck Juan was on crashed into another truck, spilling the sulfuric acid and killing both of his parents. Juan, however, was never found after the accident, and no sulfuric acid doesn't dissolve everything, so something should have been left of him, but nothing was ever found. Jennifer Cassie. Jennifer Cassie is an interesting one, and for me it's local. They found her car a couple blocks from where I live now. Basically, in 2006, Jennifer Cassie was last seen leaving work one evening. She talked to her boyfriend on the phone that night around 10. Then, the next morning after she failed to show up to work, it was discovered that she was apparently abducted, either from her apartment or its parking lot shortly before work. They found her car in a nearby parking lot later, but no sign of Jennifer. There wasn't much to go on until a security camera caught somebody dropping off her car. The footage of this person of interest is what makes the case the most chilling. He or she has been called the luckiest person of interest in history. They were caught on camera walking past a gate, and despite the camera being pretty close, the camera only took one picture every 3 seconds, and his or her face is perfectly obscured in every shot. Even though it's so close, police say they still can't confidently say if the suspect is male or female. There are still flyers up around here for her, and I think of her often. I hope someday it can be solved. Dorothy Jane Scott. The murder of Dorothy Jane Scott, Essentially, she was being stalked by somebody who claimed to be in love with her and would not leave her alone. The calls were innocent at first, but became more demanding and angry as time went on. Dorothy, of course, quite understandably became more stressed out and in fear of her life. She had even taken up a self-defense class at a local community center. The last anybody ever heard from her was over 30 years ago. A coworker had been bitten by a poisonous spider, and she and another coworker, also a woman, drove him to a nearby Arizona hospital to receive proper medical treatment. After everything was all clear, she went into the parking lot to grab her car and drive to the main entrance to pick up her friends, except she pulled barreling out of the parking lot extremely fast, going the wrong way, almost hitting her coworker who was trying to make sense of what was going on. She had been on the way to pick up her son, and they found the car she drove on fire in a ditch off an exit on the interstate somewhere in the desert. Dorothy was never seen again. Her mother still receives calls from who the police presume is the suspect. The calls discontinued several years ago, prompting theories perhaps the killer is dead or has disappeared. Bobby Dunbar. The disappearance of Bobby Dunbar. In 1912, his parents took him fishing on a lake in Louisiana, and he went missing. Police searched for him for 8 months, finally found a man named William Cantwell Walters, who was traveling with a boy that resembled Bobby. Walters claimed the boy was the son of a friend who had given him custody, and that the child's name was Bruce Anderson, not Bobby Dunbar. Investigators and positive ID from the parents determined this was actually the Dunbar's child and gave custody over to them. The town had a parade for Bobby Dunbar's return. During the trial with the Dunbars and Walters, a woman named Julie Anderson came to defend Walters, asserting this was her son Bruce, and she had given Walters custody. The courts dismissed her because she had 3 children out of wedlock. It was 1912. 2 were already deceased. The trial being in Mississippi, and her being a very poor woman from North Carolina, she gave up on fighting the case. Then, 9 years ago in 2008, one of Bobby Dunbar's granddaughters had a DNA test done. She compared her grandfather's DNA to his own brother's. They were not related. Dennis Martin. Dennis disappeared while playing with 2 other kids in the Great Smoky Mountains on a camping trip. While sneaking up to scare the parents, 2 of the boys went one way, while Dennis went around another way. The 2 boys that were together jumped out, but Dennis was never seen again. There are some odd factors involved in this case, such as the unkept man. A man and his son hiking thought they had seen a bear, but when the father focused on what they were looking at, he believed it to be a man with something over his shoulder, attempting to hide in the brush. It should be noted that Dennis was said to have a mental disorder of some kind, but this is still an odd case nonetheless. Ben McDaniel. Ben McDaniel was a scuba diver who went missing while underwater in a notoriously hard-to-navigate cave that only experienced divers were supposed to go into. Multiple experts said that it was unlikely that his body was in the cave, which was searched extensively. His parents kept hiring people to go into the cave and look for his body, and one of the search and rescue divers actually went missing, was never found while looking for him. There's a theory that he faked his own death to get out of financial trouble, but employees definitely saw him dive underwater. Also, the owner of Vortex Springs, the diving area where he went missing, died under suspicious circumstances a year later, and McDaniel's parents are convinced that it had something to do with what happened to their son. The Lost Boys. On St. Patrick's Day in 1995 in my hometown of Pickering, Ontario, 6 teenage boys went missing. They were doing some drinking that night and got the idea to go to the local marina and steal some boats. They took 2 small boats out on Lake Ontario were never seen again. The only item ever found was a gas can from one of the boats, and it was found near New York State. No bodies have ever been recovered, not a single article of clothing in neither of the boats. The search for them was extensive, spanning from the U.S. all the way up into northern Ontario. People speculated that they ran away, but there was no evidence to back that up. To this day, no one knows what happened to those boys. Thank you guys for watching. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for future content. My heart goes out to all the families and people involved in all these missing person cases. I can't imagine the sadness and loss that all of these families must feel. Day after day that goes by and no answers. I hope they find peace someday. Be sure to email your true scary stories to thesinfulsavant@gmail.com. I will include the link to my email address in the description box below. Until we meet again, stay sinful.